Welcome to Fahrenheit Performance Podcast, episode number 57. Today we have April Rice, right? 30th of October 2018, I met you. We went for a ride.
Oh my goodness.
You had a flat tire.
You remember the date? Well,
no, I saw it on my WhatsApp messages.
Oh, hilarious.
You had a flat tire. I helped you. We used to go for a Tempo Tuesday ride in the mornings.
Yeah.
We swapped numbers. You sent me a text saying thank you, and then we didn't see each other for 6 years.
Yeah. It's funny how that works.
How are you?
Yeah, good. I love that story. I was just, when we were chatting before, thinking about how that was like one of my first social rides. Yeah. And it was a tempo one. So I was feeling like, okay, I better prove myself. Don't be the slowest. Off we go. And we came out, I think, from Monkey Mile and went down right before that bus stop. And now every time I go by there, I watch that grate. Is that why you hit? I remember the noise it made. And then, I was thinking, okay, I've never changed a plat. This is going to be a long taxi ride home.
Yeah, we changed it. I think we rode home and then
it works.
History.
Yeah, exactly.
Then you went on to do Ironman, 70.3s, BTOs. I think the last count, 6 70.3s, right?
Yeah, 6 70.3s and 4 fulls. It's been a busy few years.
So do you like 70.3s or fulls better?
So, yes, I definitely do like 70.3s better. Fulls give you such an amazing sense of accomplishment, but they are a full-time job to train for.
Yep.
If I'm a competitive person, and so making the decision to do my first full came as a result of basically what happened is during COVID, I wanted to sort of take my training up to the next level. And I was on Instagram, but I never used to watch any of the videos. But I followed Lucy Charles Barclay.
Oh, nice.
And she's
a pretty good triathlete.
She's decent. So I clicked on this video, and it was a video of her talking about how her and her husband Reese were going to form a team of 10 global athletes, and they were going to train them. Yep. They were going to bring them to Club La Santa and do a training camp there. And at the end of the 1 year of training with them, you were going to get to do Challenge Roth.
Oh, nice.
So I looked that up. Yep. I had never heard of it. And all the feedback of it being one of the world's best races and how impossible it was to get into.
Yep.
I forwarded the video to Todd, and I had a laugh because I thought, he said, you should apply. I was like, I'm a mom of 2 and I'm about to turn 40. Like, I would never make it. And he said, you never know. Like, it could be a story. So I applied, and I ended up getting an email back saying, like, you're in the top 30 applicants. So for the next process, we're going to get you guys to do a video. So I know Lucy loves dogs. So I brought in my dog and my daughters. My daughters were wearing swim caps and goggles in the video. And we just kind of like had a little laugh, a little dance.
Some fun with it.
And exactly. And sent it off, and I made the team. Nice. So making that team is where I think my training really progressed.
So what was involved once you made the team?
So basically, her and Reese, she was my coach, and Reese was just sort of there for guidance.
Oh, wow. So that's a freaking big deal. All right.
Very big deal.
Okay.
Her sister Holly is like the head of all of her social media. She has her own coach, but they had like sponsorship that they brought us on board for, and it was me and 9 other athletes around the world, and we were training virtually.
You're here in Singapore already?
I was here in Singapore already, and within months of us making the team is when the whole world went into lockdown.
Oh.
So unfortunately, it wasn't making a team because of COVID. It was going to be making a team that could train virtually, and then we met for a camp, and then we did Challenge Roth. But it all became virtual. The camp got canceled. Challenge Roth got pushed out. Lucy, in what she had chosen to sort of do a year of devoting herself to training, but also coaching, then the year went on and she wanted to get back into herself competing.
Of course.
So they gave us the option to continue on with them, to push Challenge Roth a further year out. And Reese would then be my head coach, and she would just still be there. And now we have like an amazing friendship. Reese has continued to be my coach. He's the one that coached me to KONA.
Nice.
So he coached me to Roth. That will forever be my favorite race and my best performance.
You came 9th, right?
I came 9th. I beat 1 pro. That's like my claim to fame. My girls love saying that. I came 9th overall. I did a 9:45 full Ironman. I had an unbelievable bike. That was probably, thank you. That was probably the highlight for me. And anyone who has done Roth will tell you that the atmosphere there is just
Well, there's that one hill, right? That you go
Solar
through
Hill.
twice.
Yes.
Right?
So you go up it, and they say the atmosphere replicates that of the Tour de France.
Yeah, like
and
up the
everybody
ways
has
or
seen
something
that
like that,
now
yep.
because of the Netflix series, like how the fans all come right up to the athletes. And I remember Lucy telling me, be careful. When you go on that hill, your heart rate will spike and you will push higher watts than you should be because you will be so excited, like with that atmosphere. And I remember seeing my daughter and she loved it. She was like, oh,
Yeah. So
throwing
you can't
the arms up.
basically you can't pass doing that hill, right? Because
No, it's too narrow. But
Yeah.
you're just taking it all in.
Yeah.
Like you're going hard and fast, but it's just that atmosphere. You'll never forget that feeling. The other thing that made that race for me was that in challenge races, you're allowed to cross the finish line with your children. And that is something that Ironman is adamant that you cannot do. And I get it. But unfortunately, my youngest daughter was probably the sickest she's ever been in her whole life. So my husband did 30,000 steps with her on his hip that day. But Kalia was into all of it, and he picked her up and put her over, and we ran across. I almost took a face plant because she started sprinting.
oh, too fast. Yeah, because you got a marathon in your legs.
Slow down, honey. But Holly was there, and she took all these professional photos of us like coming across the finish line. And now I've got that blowing up, like me and my eldest daughter in that moment that will forever be iconic to me. So,
Yeah, man.
Yeah, and then Reese actually did the race that year. That was the year that Lucy was injured, so she was announcing and she was putting the medals on everyone, and Reese was competing, and then he retired after that year.
Okay, so he was a pro as well.
He was a pro
I was
as
going to
well.
ask him if you beat him as well.
Yeah,
but
no. But when he saw my time and we chatted, he was like, you have to do Kona. And I was like, so this was sort of my, like, I'm going to do one full.
Oh,
and say I did a
you're
full.
one of those people
And
that...
I was also like, challenge isn't an Ironman. So even though I won my age group, like, I don't get a slot to Kona by doing challenge. So he said, you just finished the race.
Hang on, you
I
won
get
your
it.
age group, so you came ninth overall.
Ninth overall.
I thought you came ninth age group.
No, I won my
even
age group in
better.
Roth. Yeah,
Nice.
yeah. No, and one thing that I have a little bit of regret on, but I made the decision that was right for me, was I didn't stay for the awards. And Roth is known as being like, as the final finishers come in, they do these firework displays. And just because Jaden was so sick, like she had a fever, she had one lick of ice cream in a 24-hour span. So I just couldn't in my heart stay. I just wanted to get home with them. But so I didn't get presented with my trophy or anything. Like they chased me up afterwards, which was nice, and it sent it out. But yeah, amazing experience, amazing memory. And then Reese saying he would love to stay on as my coach and he would love to train me up through another full. And he said, you will qualify for Kona, no problem. Like you will be fine. But it was a bit raw. So I gave it some time. And then I did the following year do St. George Worlds. And a week later, I did Langkawi full and qualified for Kona.
Of course you did.
Well, it was a bit ridiculous. And I remember saying to
My legs
Reese,
would still be sore from the week
I think it was
before.
just like I was in a crazy place, but I went to St. George and enjoyed it. And then I had the idea that I was going to try in Langkawi, and I had emailed Reese like a month before just saying, so I got this crazy idea and tell me if I'm being crazy. But a week after, St. George is a full in Langkawi, and there's only 18 women competing in my age group. So I just think I might have a chance. And he said, okay, well, is the focus St. George or is the focus Langkawi? Because the way I train you is going to be different. And I was like, well, I don't really like training for a full, so let's make St. George the focus. And I think because of my Roth base, and that's the hardest I've ever trained in my life. I built up to 25 hours a week, and I was training really, really hard for it. So I didn't want to do that, and I felt like I didn't have the time to do that.
Yep.
But I still felt like I had a bit of that base. So Langkawi, I just pushed through, and I was lucky. Like Todd was there, and it was just him, so I didn't have to worry about my girls.
And logically speaking, you don't lose fitness as soon as you finish your race, right?
No,
So you finished
definitely
that
don't.
first race. You still got it.
For
It's just a
sure.
matter of recovering in time
Yes.
and going at it again mentally,
For
being
sure.
able to do it.
I mean, full Ironmans, anyone that has done them will tell you that the fourth discipline is nutrition, but the fifth is mental.
Yeah,
and really it comes first.
It's not like a car race where at the end of the race the car's trashed and you can't use it again. You're ready to go if you can recover, right?
Yes, exactly. And I do think, like, from my years of like childhood athletics, I have a pretty good grit. So when it does come to pushing through stuff, like, I'm pretty hard on myself, but I think that's worked for me long term. And so just in Langkawi, there was like a lot of stopping at porta potties and walking the aid stations, and iRun was challenging. But the year I did it, it flooded.
Yeah. Oh, and so where there's a flood across the course and you had to carry your bikes.
Yes. So I never carried my bike. I just went for it. We had to empty out the liquid from my tires after the race. But I was leading, so I led the swim and I led the bike. So I had one of those motorbikes in front of me the whole time.
So if you're close enough to them.
Well, I was behind him, and I remember, like, there was one lane, and so he had to basically slow down so the liquid didn't go in his exhaust pipe, and I was overtaking him, but I just went for it. I basically had to go into oncoming traffic, just went, because I felt like if I stopped, it was going to fall over. So I just went for it, and then he went over and passed me, and the whole time I was thinking, they're going to cancel this race. Like, they're not going to do the run. The roads are flooded. This is insanity. So
Malaysia, come on, they're not going to cancel it.
Well, now I know that. But I kept thinking, I'm not going to have to do the run, but maybe they'll take my place after the bike and maybe I'll get the qualification. And then the run started and the whole run still went on. So it was hard. And Todd was taking my splits, and he said, like, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. But I probably could have walked for more than I did because the girl who came second was quite a bit behind me, but she already had a slot.
Oh, and the bike leg.
So she didn't even take her slot. So like, I literally had a full hour to get that slot. But it is what it is.
You could have taken some selfies and some photos and stopped to download the Netflix.
Asia race. But yeah, like, and I brought a Canadian flag and I put it in my luggage bag. And I said to Todd, you know, it would be so special to cross the finish line with this, but he was like, do you want to do that? Do you want to jinx it? I'm like, you're right. No. And so I left it in my luggage bag, but he snuck it into his stuff and he gave it to me. And so, like, now I have a photo of, like, the Canadian flag. And
so your living room walls are full of these, like, crossing Roth with your daughter, crossing Langkawi with a Canadian flag.
Like, a full disclosure, we moved condos. We live in the same condo, but we were in an upper unit and we're now ground floor. We have a 12-year-old golden retriever with bad hips. So we moved to ground floor, and we haven't hung any photos yet. We've been in our place for 6 months, and it's like the death of me, but I'm going to get on it. And then, yes, we do have some athlete photos and medals and stuff that we want to put up on the walls.
So you are Canadian, right?
Correct.
You moved to Singapore for work or for
my goodness. So
10 years ago? How long ago?
So basically we moved, my husband did a shift from engineering into finance, and to make that shift, he applied to the London Business School and got in. So I put my career on hold and we moved to London together. After the 2 years of him
your career was a police one, right? After all this, you were a Canadian.
I was a Canadian police officer for Calgary. That is the city that I grew up in. And that was the city I wanted to police in. I went to college out in Ontario, which is also where my husband went to university. We both moved back to Calgary. He was an engineer. I was a police officer. And he was just spending half of his work day watching the markets and had a real passion for it.
So up until that point, did you think that being a police officer was your career path? Did you want to do that your whole life? Be like police chief one day or something?
I actually went to the University of Victoria and I was in pre-business and I did that for 2 years. And then I applied to police college, which is like, they basically do a 2-year diploma program. And I wanted to do it just to see if it was what I really wanted to do. Because it sounds silly, but I used to read crime novels and watch Law and Order with my dad and always did have an interest in it. So much to my parents' demise, I did not finish my degree. I went and did a police diploma, but then I did get on with the police. So when I told them that I wanted to move to London with Todd, they were devastated. They thought I was giving up my career for him. But I was like, you know what? I'm taking a 2-year leave. We're going to go to London just for him to get his MBA. But then he got a really good job over there. So that job kept us in London for 1 more year. And then he got transferred to Hong Kong. So we were in Hong Kong, and that's where we had my eldest daughter.
Baby number 1 was in Hong Kong.
Baby number 1 was in Hong Kong. We were only actually there 2 years, and then Todd got a different job here. Okay. So that brought us here. This is where baby number 2 came. This is when I returned
Which is 2014-ish.
So first baby was 2013, and second 2016.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so then So we rode in 2018. So you didn't do anything for quite a few years.
No. So basically fitness wise, like when we were in London, I used to like ride, I was a postie there. So I used to like ride my bike and then deliver post all day and then ride my bike and that was it. And I played a bit of touch rugby, but I hadn't done any swimming, any triathlon for ages. When we were living in London, I had a friend that wanted to do her first sprint. And she asked if I could kind of coach her and help her, which I was happy to do. And then she was like, why don't you just do it? Like, you're natural at this. You should just do it. So I did one in London, Olympic distance. We traveled together and did one in Barcelona.
Oh, nice.
And then nothing after having kids. So nothing in Hong Kong. We did the odd random bike ride, but quite hilly and hard to ride there. And then nothing when we moved here for the longest time. I got into doing like a mummy boot camp, which I started coaching. And then through that, I met some women that were into cycling and wanted me to come out. And that's when we would have met. But I hadn't done any triathlons or anything. It's actually Todd that got me back into it because he like had a bet with a buddy at a bar. Like, I bet you can't do a sprint triathlon. And he was like, okay.
I bet my wife can do better than your wife.
So we got out there and like we're training together. And now like we haven't looked back. And like, this is why living in Singapore is so incredible. Like we have an amazing helper. And so what would have been like Friday night, date night, go for an expensive dinner. Instead, it's like Saturday morning, long ride day, go for brunch after. It's such a healthier decision. And it just gives us that quality time doing something that we love. So, yeah.
But you had a swimming background, right? So you didn't just decide, okay, I'm going to do triathlon and excel in it. You had a competitive background, right?
Yeah, so I swam from the ages of 5 to 18.
Okay.
I only ever made junior national level. Like swimming is one of those sports where there's the most competitors in it of any other sport. And so I did as well as I could have, but by the end I was over it. And I had an opportunity when I was, I think, like 14 or so when I did, it's called Kids of Steel. It might even still exist. My dad found it, and it's a triathlon. And he was like, you love riding your bike, you love running. I used to do cross country in school. So I went out and did one. And I ended up doing one the following year that qualified me for Alberta Summer Games. And I went but that was it.
So you started triathlon when you were a kid of steel?
Yes. When I was, and I can't even remember how
14,
old I was.
15.
I want to say younger, 11,
wow.
12.
Okay.
Yeah. So I had an opportunity then. My swim coach's best friend, who was also a swim coach, actually started the first triathlon team in Calgary, and he wanted to recruit me. And my swim coach said, look, like, I think this is a really good opportunity, but obviously I would love to keep coaching you. And I felt so much devotion to my swim coach that I said no.
So we're talking 90s.
Yeah.
Right?
So I was born in 81. Yeah. So 92, 93.
Because Sydney Olympics 2000 had Simon Whitfield.
Yep.
He was Canadian, right?
Yes.
So
correct.
Triathlon in Canada back in those days was actually
it was still next to nothing. Like, I think Simon Whitfield moved to Australia from a young age, and that's where he was training.
Okay.
So, but again, it existed. Like Paula Finley, that she was this childhood swimmer as well, but got into triathlon later. So, but I do think like in and around the 90s, it was still a novelty. It's not like it is now. And like you said, I don't even think it was in the Olympics then. And so I never like went down that path. I had a couple as a kid. I did enjoy it. For me, I enjoyed doing anything that wasn't just swimming.
Yeah.
I feel like the mentality, and it's beautiful that there's been a shift from the way that kids train, but it did used to be all about the miles. So I was training like 10 days a week, up back and forth, staring at that black line. And in my last year of swimming, I mean, I peaked when I was 14 and I swam till I was 18. So those last couple years of not getting a single PB personal best, like they really were hard mentally. So it's what I encourage in my kids now, and what all the research has shown is like when you're young, get your kids in lots of stuff. Like let them choose, but keep them busy. And that's why Midisprint, like Kalia, my eldest, just did the aquathon and loved it.
Yeah.
You know, it's just different than swimming.
I heard that was an awesome race. We
it
were
is.
there on
I
the
was there,
weekend.
yeah. And everyone's like, why aren't you doing it? And I was like, oh, I don't sprint anymore. once you do an Ironman, I can't go back to the Midisprint, like 5K all out. I think I'm going to injure myself.
So you got back into the sport roughly 2018, 19, 20, right?
Well, so yeah, I did those couple when we lived in London, and then nothing until here.
Yep.
And really, like my first 70.3 was in 2019. And I think probably at least like, so my
Do you remember what your time? Do you know what your time was when your first 70.3?
I was just sub 5. I did a decent first one. Yeah.
And what?
Yeah. But that was in Australia. Like, so I came 4th in my age group, and I think like the slot rolled down. Like normally top 4 doesn't make the worlds, but that's when I qualified for Taupo. Which...
If you did that in Asia, you'll be first place for sure, right?
So, and this has been the story of my career. Like, I am in this beautiful Asia bubble. Now, let's be honest, Asia is very up and coming in the sport.
And it's hotter and it's rough. Sometimes there's a rougher courses as well.
Yes, for sure. And I think, like, the swim is generally not where people thrive in Asia.
Yeah.
People didn't grow up swimming here. And so the comfort of swimming, even open water, it's not there. But I have done very well in Asia, and I enjoy going to other countries to compete because I feel so much better. But with that comes like all the people
humbling.
that grew up in that country.
Yeah.
So going on a world stage is very different.
A lot of the people go to Busselton with very high hopes, new bikes, think they're going to smash it. And let's just say they do a 5-hour, which is a great result. They probably come 40th or something in the men's with a 5-hour result. And there's dudes with 10-year-old Cervelos passing them, right?
Yes. Yeah. No, it's true. And that road surface in Australia, it's something that we take for granted. Like, the roads are so clean and smooth in Singapore. There's also no hills here. So like with that, it's just different. But there is something to be said about training in the heat and humidity here and then going somewhere cooler.
Yeah. So then straight into 70.3s.
So, yeah,
and then when was your first full
Roth
distance? Was the first full distance, I guess.
Yes, Roth was my first full distance. And when I did, before I did that 70.3, I did kind of get back into things. So I've got, in my head, I'm picturing me holding my youngest on my hip. And so Jaden was born in 2016. So I think basically between like 2017 and 18 is when I did like the Meta Sprint series, is when I did Trifactor. Todd and I went and did Laguna Phuket.
With a horrible swim, I hear.
I don't mind it. It's different though, because it's the ocean and then the sea. The sea and then like a lagoon. Which isn't, lovely.
And it's a hilly bike.
Yes, definitely a hillier bike. And people walk their bikes, and it's dangerous, like the descents. That's something that like I've never had. I think I've gotten a lot better, but bike handling skills only come from doing hills like that. So you don't get a lot of practice here. But that would have been my first Olympic. We call it Olympic Plus because I think it ends up the bike ride's like 50K or something. But I loved that one. So it wasn't until like the next year that I did my first half. And then you don't. I haven't gone back in distance much. Yeah. I find that the way that the training and your body progresses, I'm 43. Like, I'm not getting any younger, so I find sprinting harder. And doing a lot more of like the zone 2 training, but I do actually find I have a better headspace when I can do like a nice long outdoor
and mistakes don't make as much difference on the longer races, right? If you don't make, there's no getting out of the swim in the first pack and you bummed out that you missed the first ride, right?
Yes.
You can make those distances up, right?
I think COVID, so I would have always said with triathlon that because I was a childhood swimmer, the swim is my strength. My swim's okay now. I still find it hard to do a lot of swim training because I did it for so many years. But COVID changed my bike, and training on Team Charles Barkley changed my bike. Like the bike workouts that they gave me and the hours I spent on Zwift. And I love the gratification of like getting a badge on Zwift. And so as soon as I saw there were all these badges, I wanted to get them all. And so I just spent so much time on a trainer, and that will change your strength on the bike. No question.
Now do you still spend most of your time training on the...
Yeah, I mean, we've had friends with, there's the environment between cyclists and motor drivers here, I think, is pretty harsh. And like my husband doesn't even want to ride outside anymore. I still love my Saturday social. So I'll go out with some girlfriends. We call it our free therapy. So I still like doing at least one ride outside. Yeah. But yeah, I mostly do
because
Zwift.
If you're doing structured workouts, the bang for the buck on the indoor trainer, you can roll out of bed at 6:05. You're on the trainer. You do your 1 hour, 7:05. You're done. Then 7:15. You're showered and doing back to business, right?
Exactly. Yeah, Zwift makes it so easy, and there is a community there. You want to do any of the racing or the rides on there, you can, and yeah, it's just so much easier, and it's harder because you're never coasting, right? Yeah. So like an hour on the trainer is like 2 hours outside.
I heard that actually. People say that the gravel racing in America, or the gravel racing in general, the people that do indoor training do much better on the gravel races because there's no coasting. So you're pedaling all the time. But the people that do outdoor riding, they slow, they peloton, they sort of the coast, there's traffic lights, so the legs get a bit of a break. But the people, and by gravel racing, there is no traffic lights and there's no peloton, so you're out there just pedaling all the time. And the people that do the indoor training do much better with those races.
Yeah,
right?
It makes sense.
Yeah. So then, when did you realize that this was your thing, right? That
I don't know.
Was it that Roth race?
Well, I think, I'd like to say I chose the sport, but I think the sport kind of chose me too. And I think that my results have been amazing in Asia, and I get like lots of accolades from friends. I think that they don't know how I can train as much as I train, but it's a novelty for me because I lost my LOC during COVID, and ever since being abroad.
Because they changed the rules, right?
Yes. Yeah. So when I lost my LOC, I literally couldn't work at all.
Yep.
There was no way I could
You
work.
had to be sponsored like a fresh off the boat.
And companies weren't sponsoring expat trailing spouses. That was a shame, but it gave me more time. And so during COVID and making that team, it was I had no excuses. Now, COVID was hard because I wanted to be there for my kids and dealing with small groups and homeschooling and everything. But once everything got back to normalcy and I still wasn't working, training was I have a very hard time not getting a green check mark in Training Peaks. It was I was focused. I was getting the work done.
So is all your training while your kids are at school?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. And I'm lucky with that because I am a morning person, but I'm realizing more, and I'm taking a step back from triathlon this year because the time that in the morning, that time with my girls, I quite often was wanting to get the work done. So I would do stuff early morning and then I'd miss a little bit of that time with them. And they're only going to be that age for so long. And you take for granted having a helper, and she's helping them with breakfast and lunches, and maybe I drive them to school so I have 5 minutes. But this year I'm really driving them to school, seeing them in the morning, and then once they're gone, I can get my training done. I've got almost all day. I'm coaching swimming part-time, but it's not taking so much of my day that I can't put in the hours of training when they're at school.
I think a lot of people don't realize, as a parent, your kids are only kids for 10 years, right? Then they are teenage angry people for 10 years, right? And then they're adults for the next 40 years of your life, right? So when their kids spend time with them as kids, when they're angry kids spend time with them as angry kids, and then from when I was 20 until now, I've been practically the same person, right? To my parents at least, right?
Yes, totally. And I think my eldest, I am very, very conscious of social media and phones and technology, and most of her friends have phones, and I'm saying no, and I'm putting my foot down. And when it comes to grabs and public transport, she needs a phone because of that. I'm honey, mommy can drive you wherever you need to go. When you're at school, you can use your iPad because you have to have an iPad, and send me a message. But she still actually likes me coming to her events and coming when I go to see her swim train.
You're
I'm
still
the
a cool
only
mom.
parent in the stands.
Yeah,
exactly. I don't know how much longer I've got, so I'm trying to take advantage of that. But tonight she'll be training at Evans Track, and I showed up and I didn't see a single other parent there, and I've got the time, and she doesn't mind me being there. She's not oh my God, my mom's here. I don't want. And I said, is it okay if I come tonight? She's yeah. So, take it when you can, because my youngest, she'll be I swear, the next year, Mom, leave me alone. Don't be here.
She's opposite.
Yes.
Because they're never the same.
No, of course not. Doesn't matter that they're two girls. They're very different.
So let's touch on that, actually. So you got two girls, right? So you've gone through pregnancy, weight gain, losing fitness, hormone changes, then finishing having two kids, then coming out of sort of that cycle, and now you're back as a very elite athlete again, right? Oh, now you are back at a very high level athlete. Okay.
Thank you.
How did you kickstart? A lot of times when you put on so much weight from having a baby, it's hard to get back into the groove and to get back into a rhythm and sort of training again.
Yeah,
Did you do anything that in particular that?
So I don't agree with the general mentality in Asia in that during a pregnancy you need to be so careful. When I was in Hong Kong and pregnant with my first, the best thing my doctor could have said to me was, don't do anything you didn't do before. So a lot of women all of a sudden feel oh, I'm pregnant, so I'm not going to do any high intensity anything. I'm going to do yoga. I remember telling myself, I'll do yoga when I'm pregnant. Well, yoga is not my thing. And so I kept doing what I was doing, and I just scaled back the intensity. And so my advice for pregnant women is, of course, have a chat with your doctor, but maybe have a chat with a different doctor or a sports doctor, because the reality is you still need to move. And your baby will thank you for it long term. So both of my pregnancies, I gained weight, no question, but probably not a lot of weight. I thankfully didn't have high risk pregnancies. And very soon after having both my children, I got right back to stuff. Now, I have a bit of regret at doing that after my second, because she was a rather large baby, so I probably shouldn't have got back so quickly. But what motivated me to get back was I was doing a mummy boot camp in the botanical gardens, which I eventually started coaching. But when I was doing it, it's just a community.
Which is getting weights and doing weights and
so
bands.
Basically,
maybe.
we would all show up with our babies in strollers or whatever. And yeah, sometimes the instructor would like stay with the babies with the strollers, and we'd do one lap of the inner garden. And then she would bring like stretch cords and small weights, and we'd do a little bit of weights. And yeah, so like is a little bit of weight, a little bit of aerobic. And then afterwards we all go for a coffee. And so it was much more about the community, which is important when you're a mother and you're a trailing spouse and you're trying to find your place in an expat country. But also it is getting some of that fitness back. So that's what I started off doing. And then I think just like with the triathlon stuff, with after my second, it was just a new challenge. And it was something that my husband definitely got me back into. And then when I did well in my first meta sprint, you get a taste for it, right? And they do a great job of like dipping your toe in with the aquathon, duathlon, triathlon. And then they try and get you to do Bintan, and it's increasing the distances. But they also make it like about the community with your families. Yeah. And you see tons of people out there
they
with
have
their kids.
the splash and dash, and then they have the scooter race, and they have those sort of things
and
as well.
So my eldest, her first splash and dash was in Bintan. And that was where Todd did his first Olympic distance. And then he did the 70.3 over there. So we both progressed in distance, and our kids have seen it all along. And I do pride myself in trying to be a mentor for my girls and teaching them not only about like sport to be in shape, but also like about the nutrition side of things. Yeah, like what they eat at home is fueling their body for the sports that they do. And my dad always used to say to me, keep them busy, keep them out of trouble, put them in sport. And it's like this ethos that I've kept in my head all along. And so now both my girls, Callie is swimming and Jaden's doing gymnastics. If they don't do that for the rest of their life, I don't care, but I just want them doing something. And they do seem to have an interest in that. And so I just want to foster that passion.
So how do you juggle all the training that you do with all the activities? How many hours a week are you training?
So right now I've way scaled back. In the lead up to Taupo last year, I got up to about like 16 to 18 hours a week. But again, I don't work full time. So like I don't have great advice for people that do this sport and work full time. I think I have the utmost admiration for people that do that, including my husband, because the reality is you have to be so tight at managing your time.
Oh yeah, you're on the road at 5 a.m. or something, right?
Exactly. And something's got to give. And I do think, as much as I wanted to be a role model for my girls the past like 4 or 5 years, like when I was training for full Ironman, I was tired, angry mummy. So even though I did the training when they were at school, when they got home and they wanted to throw a ball around or whatever, like I didn't want to.
You just want to nap.
So exactly. Yeah. And I think that wasn't fair to them. And so I've done all the accomplishments I wanted to in that sport. And I'm not going to say I'll never do it again, because pretty soon they won't want anything to do with me, and I'm gonna have to
have all this time again.
Exactly, I'll have that time, but like I think that they saw the positives and they saw the negatives. And we've been on some incredible family holidays that we've done the sport on, that they've done the sport on. Kalia did the Desiree Kids Ironman. We drove up there and we put her bike on the back of our car as well, and so I think that that finding the time to train is like knowing that training is also perhaps like you're influencing other people. And through social media, like I have a little, actually when I made Team Charles Barkley, the first thing they said to me was, we recommend making a second profile, because like your profile is you and your kids and your dogs, and it's a closed profile, which we appreciate. But if you want to like be tagging the sponsors that are on board, as well as just putting up your accomplishments, like you should do your own sport one. So I did that, and I have found that that's almost like my second job, is like you do the sport, then you post the photos and you tag the sponsors. And it's important. I don't really have a big platform. I have like 600 followers, but I try, right? And I just think like I have had women reach out to me personally and saying like, you're such an inspiration for me as a mother that you're still able to accomplish these things. And that hits home. Like, that's why I do it, right?
Like 9:40 for a full distance. You're a mother is even better, right? Even as a 20-something-year-old, nothing else to do except train, is still a good accomplishment,
yeah,
right? So,
and I think that's like I say to this day, and I said it at my dad's celebration of life, like he put in me this attitude and this grit, and you can't really teach that to an adult. But as a kid, if you go through pain and you see, like, you feel the rush of getting a personal best time or winning a race or whatever, you want that. You seek that later in life, and you realize you have to put in the work.
and especially if it wasn't easy to get there, and then you get the result, it's doubly achievement, right?
Yeah. And so I think for me, that's still in my head. And so I'm trying to teach my girls that as well. And so managing the time, I mean, yeah, people always say that, like, how do you do it as a mom? And being a mom is the hardest job I've ever had. It, like, by far none. It's harder than being a police officer. I will say that. It was
Because it gets personal. Police officer, you don't know the people that you're arresting.
Exactly. Well, and my eldest and I are very alike, and she knows how to, like, stick it in and then twist. So, yeah, she tests my patience, but I also see so much of myself in her and appreciate that hopefully what I'm doing and what I have done will influence them long term. And and other moms, like, and just any moms that feel overwhelmed, I think my advice to them is, like, you need to do something that makes you happy. And for me, it was the accomplishments I've made through sport, but you have to enjoy the journey. And that's the training. It's not just the competing. And so training every day, like, get out for a walk, get out for a run, get that headspace.
It sounds kind of selfish, but you kind of got to do something for yourself, right? You're not always doing, because as a parent, you're always trying to do things for your kids, or you're always trying to do things for the family. But you need to do something for yourself. Even that means just go for a ride or go for a big long walk.
And I, like, it's easy for me to say I always feel mom guilt, but you are a better mom having done something for yourself. You just show up. You're better there knowing, like, I know for certain when I get up with the girls and I'm frustrated with them not putting their shoes on and not getting out the door, sometimes when I've gotten up early and done something before, I'm just, the endorphins from that run or that bike ride make me, like, a little bit more patient and a little bit less angry.
Okay.
So it's worth it.
You briefly touched on your dad just now. I know I was snooping around on your sort of online profile just now before this, and he's had quite a big role in sort of endurance sports in your life until you left Canada or whatever, right?
Yeah, for sure. My dad was always my biggest cheerleader. I think, like, I'm 13 and 15 years younger than my brother and sister. And so, yeah, I was an afterthought. My mom had my brother when she was 17 and my sister when she was 19. So my parents were still kids themselves and figuring it all out. And then later in life when they had me, my dad, like, poured all of his energy into whatever I was going to do.
And all the lessons learned already, right?
Exactly. So, yeah, so he got me into swimming. And then when he heard about this Kids of Steel, he put me in it. And yeah, I mean, I still remember when we were clearing out my parents' house, like, I found this album and he used to, like, put in every little ribbon that I bought as a swimmer and glue up photos of me running cross country. And yeah, like, he was just there. And now that I'm a parent, I appreciate the driving to the sports and whatever. But growing up in Canada, in Calgary, and getting up when it's dark out, and then waking up your child and feeding your child and driving them to practice.
And
then
sitting there for an hour and a half while they practice.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
There was no Instagram back then.
There was no scrolling
There was just a
on a
newspaper
phone.
that you would have to flip through.
Exactly. So, yeah, I really appreciate, and I told him this before he passed, so I was fortunate enough to have that moment. But I'm the athlete I am today because of him. There is no question. So I take that on, and I also hope that I pass that on to other moms and my kids to know that you are influencing them even when they're not thinking about it, even when they are taking for granted the fact that you are their ride everywhere.
Yeah.
They would be doing it without it, right?
Yeah,
so
for sure.
So as a parent, you have to show up.
Yeah. Okay, so last year you did 70.3 Worlds. You did KONA the year before. But this year I saw that you were running 100 kilometers. I don't know where, to Hong Kong or there was some.
So last year I did Hong Kong, the Oxfam 100K. That was my husband's and a buddy of his idea. We did it as a team of 4, and it was
He ropes you into a lot of these things.
does,
he got
doesn't he?
70.3. It was his fault.
True. Yeah,
100
and
kilometers.
him to blame and him to thank. I think
Depends on how the race goes.
yes. So he loved the 100K, and he is type 1 diabetic. So running is awesome because he can always be seeing and managing his sugars. So it is something that we both made a decision to do more of going forward. He also has supported me so much through my journey in the past 4 years. Like, I want to focus this year on supporting him more and being there for my girls.
So he does triathlon as well, right? And he's
does.
he's doing running as well. So this 2025 we're in now, you're not going to focus so much on 70.3s and triathlon.
No,
You're gonna...
so like I'm going to do probably more triathlons in the future, but this year I don't have a single one in the diary.
This whole year, you're
This
not
whole
signed
year.
up for
I mean,
anything.
again, it's January.
You're not going back to KONA, that means...
No, I'm not going back to KONA. So I did KONA 2 years ago. I did Nice last year.
So you've done KONA, you've done Nice, you've done Roth, you've done 70.3. So you've done all of the big...
Yeah, I have been
big
very
races.
fortunate. I mean, again, of course, I had to work hard and I had to qualify, but I have pretty much done like the biggest races there are out there. And I have my husband to thank for planting the idea, but he also is the financial provider in my family. These are not cheap races to go to. So we have tried to make some of them about us. Like the trip to Nice last year was just him and I, and it was like a kid-free holiday with an Ironman in the middle. People are like, April, most people don't do an Ironman on their holiday, but hey, it was amazing. It was incredible. And I do feel like I've ticked so many boxes that this year, again, we of course have friends doing Marbella in Spain. That's where Worlds is. So they just assume that I'm going to do it, but I'm not. We have a focus on doing the UTMB Chianti race, which is a 75K ultra in March. So Tom and I are doing that together. I did just do a 30K race in Cambodia, so I'm a volunteer for a charity, and the charity was doing a site visit, which I've always helped them with the fundraising, but I've never been to the site. So I went on this site visit. It was unbelievable. It just filled my cup, and just such an experience to see these children and what the charity is doing. But at the end of it, there was a race, and the woman who helps run it.
Did you plan to do the race, or you just showed up? Oh, there's a race. I'll just enter that race.
So she put it out in the chat group and said, like, is anyone interested? Because she actually runs ultras, but she went and hurt her hip, and so everybody in the organization either walked or ran the 18K, and I was the only one that signed up for the 32. So I had to take my own transport, but it was fine because I went out there and did it, and I ended up winning.
Of course you did. Of course
This was my husband too. He's like, okay, I love you. Text me saying no expectations. I'm not even going to train for this. But I did. So after Telvo, I did do some training. I'm a member of it. We call it the Hawker Run Club. And they do a challenge every year. It's called the 100 out and the 100 in. So in the last 10 days of December, you have to run 100K. In the first 10 days of January, you have to run 100K.
That's like the Festive 500, but for running.
Exactly. So when he set this up, I was just like, there's no way. I'm going to be in New Zealand. We're going to have a holiday. We're going to be in a camper van. But then I was also like, what does it take to run 10K every day? It'll be a break for my kids. Every second day, Todd ran with me.
It's only 1 out of 24 hours, right?
Yeah. And that's because I did 10 every day. It was never overwhelming. And so that trained me for this race without even really thinking about it, like running the trails in New Zealand. And then this race is actually flat as a pancake. I said to Todd, we should do the 100K next year because none of these 5,000, 3,000 meter elevation. Exactly. So we'll see. But it was an amazing race. I had Angkor Wat on my bucket list. It was one I wanted to go.
Because they do a marathon there every year, right?
Yes. But this one actually puts you through some of the temples and the villages. And it's not a big race. There was only 200 people in my category. So it was like, I was running by myself for huge parts of the race. And then all of a sudden I was like, in this amazing temple.
Wears the vest, and
I just wear a running backpack. Yeah, that's it. I mean, 32K, you need
didn't
water.
have the poles.
No, I'm taking the poles to Italy. But I don't think I needed the poles in a nice flat race, but they do help you with the hills for sure. I'm learning. I mean, I'm not a natural trail runner or ultra runner, but I am learning, and I think it's something fun, a new challenge to do, and who knows where it'll take me. We'll see.
thinking, what next for you, right? Just more trail running this year?
I mean, yeah. So that's all I have in the calendar right now. So my husband's doing the marathon in Melbourne in October, and we've got a couple family holidays this year booked without a race, which is just going to be new and different because we haven't done that. Yeah. But just try and be present with our kids on those holidays, I think will be a big thing. And I mean, I'll go crazy if I don't train and have something.
You'll bring your running shoes on those holidays.
Oh, of course. But also, more so is like after this race in Chianti, I'll have to look for something because I really do like having something in the diary to train for. Zwift is great, get the badges. Running is great if I have a running race in the calendar. But I struggle to really dial in on any training when I don't have a race. I am considering doing a high rocks this year. That's like that actually is something that I'm trying to advocate for myself because I advocate it to so many other females, having been a boot camp and an F45 instructor. Like strength is important.
And high rocks, so in this physio clinic, we see a few high rocks people, right? And one of them is pretty high level. Yeah. And I come to notice that the high rocks community and the triathlon community is actually a lot of similarities, right?
I'm surprised.
Because 70.3, it's a 1.9, it's a 90 and a half marathon, right? Mm-hmm. So if you say your time is 5 hours in Bintan, and I say my time is 5 hours in Bustleton, we have something because we know the distance is roughly the same. So high rocks is the same, right? You do the high rocks Hong Kong and I do high rocks Prague. It's the same 10 stations or whatever it was. Exactly. So it's quite comparable. We have something to talk about, and then you can go to Prague and do that course, or if it's any different, and then you can. It's sort of the same sort of standard distances, same community. Yeah. Everyone has a common sort of experience.
Exactly.
Right?
Well, and I think like just knowing, coming from the F45 background, I know like a lot of fitness is cyclical. And so people get into something because it's the next best thing. And I think High Rocks has done a great job at bringing strength and cardio together. So you had all these CrossFit athletes that can like do incredible things with weights, but they don't run. Next thing you know, like I'm as a triathlete going to the track and there's all these people doing burpees on the side, doing a lap of the track and doing lunges.
Tuesdays at Evans Road, it's like prime time.
It's changed completely, but it's made me curious. Yeah. And I have the run. I'm okay on the run, but all the strength I've lost. I've put so many hours into training a triathlon, and it's like when I did Roth, I was still doing strength 1 to 2 times a week. So that's probably why that's been my best race ever, because it not only helps with injury prevention, but it also just like keeps everything together. And as an aging female, like my hormones are changing again. So it's time to get on top of like regulating that with some strength work. So yeah, we'll see. That could be something else.
April, it's been a pleasure. Best way to get a hold of you? swimbikerun.mom?
Yeah.
Mom with an O, right? Because
yes, with an O, because I'm Canadian.
You're the North Americans.
Yes. That's funny. I've never had to qualify that. But yeah, swimbikerun.mom. Okay. Is on Instagram. That's where I try and post like little reels or photos from the training that I'm doing, or anyone has any questions.
Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
And we'll do this again, and you can update me on your trail running.
Sounds good.